Hi, I'm Tegan from the Mining Mum podcast. Are you thinking about a career change in 2025? Sign up to our database at talentminingandminerals.com. And if you're a company seeking new talent in your business, reach out to us. We have the best talent looking for exceptional opportunities. Welcome back to the Mining Mum podcast for 2025. I'm so excited to be back, and I hope everybody had an amazing break. As some of you might have seen in my last episode, 2025 is the year of health and wealth and wellness for me. So when Daniel reached out, who's going to be our guest today, reached out to me and told me about his mission, I was so excited to bring him to the podcast and be my first guest for 2025. Daniel has worked in construction and done FIFO in the industry for over 25 years. Now he's pivoted into his own business, 10,000 Tradies, which is he's on a mission to help support tradies in the mining and FIFO and construction industries learn how to meditate. So thank you so much for joining me today, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
And where are you dialing in from today?
I'm in Mullumbimby on the eastern side of Australia.
Awesome. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your story, about those 25 years in construction, FIFO and mining, and then how you pivoted into this new work and new business that you've just started?
Sure. So basically, I got into the industry young as a labourer and didn't really love school. I was always someone that was told had potential but just couldn't focus, would rather be chasing butterflies outside than listening to someone talk. And so naturally going outside and working outside and, having that kind of trade was something that attracted me. And so I got stuck into it. And, then I fell into the culture, drinking heavily, smoked a pack a day of cigarettes, breakfast was a Red Bull and a meat pie, super unhealthy stuff. But that was, the archetype that I kind of fell into. And then about 10 years ago now, 2014, I learnt to meditate, and I wasn't looking for any particular, big change, but I took it on and started to do it every now and then. And I felt, these little changes would feel good. I actually felt my blood pressure drop, which was weird because I didn't know I had high blood pressure, but I could feel after I'd meditate for a few days that my blood pressure would start to go lower, and then when I'd stop, I'd feel the blood pressure come back. And probably the lifestyle of the alcohol and cigarettes didn't help that. But eventually I got to a point where I made a decision that I was going to do this as a serious thing, where I'd commit to it for 2 times a day for 20 minutes and just find out what it was all about. I got really curious reading these books or these statements people would say that life is bliss. And my thought was, if someone has experienced that and that's a possibility in a human body, it's really interesting that I'm not experiencing that and that I'm alive. And what is the actual point of life? That's one of the questions, so I dedicated myself to do the practice and find out. And then basically that decision started a momentum that, changed my entire life from the inside out. And all of those things, all of those unhealthy habits that I was so attached to, and that they were actually, I couldn't quit smoking. I tried every time I'd come back, and I'd feel like, I was just stuck to it and there's nothing I could do to escape. And then after 6 months of meditation, it fell away. And so through this process over the last 10 years, I've gotten a direct experience education of how transformative these practices are. And then when and I've lived the FIFO life, I've gone and done the 3-in-1s and the 2-in-1s and experienced the depression and the loneliness and, all these kind of things. And I've had the marriage breakdown. And, 3 years ago, I just had a baby. So I've had the experience of being a dad with a newborn and still getting the practice done. So that's why I decided to, start 10,000 Tradies. It kind of came to me and as an idea that if we can get 10,000, then that would, really help to tip the momentum. And then the benefits, everyone doing it would then be able to spread that with their friends and their family, and the flow on effect would be way more than 10,000. So that's why I set the goal at 10,000. And yeah, and here we are. So 2025, we kicked it off.
That's awesome. And, obviously now in this day and age, 2025, people are more open-minded when we talk about like meditation, wellness, health being well. Back then, probably 10 years ago in the industry that you're in, probably not as open-minded. How did you feel your peers took it on, or people that were in your circle when you were like, making that personal life change?
I think it's a good point. It's another reason why I've created this platform and to create the community, because I was isolated in my choices to do that. People look at you like you're weird, and that it's confronting for them.
Yeah.
So, and I know, like, not 1 out of 10 people might take it up and continue to do it. So I want to create a platform where people that don't have the immediate support can come and connect to a larger community of people that like actually want to take responsibility for their mental hygiene and process it every day. And so, yeah, that's that, because, I did experience the kickback, I used to get called broccoli because, I didn't eat meat. So they'd call me broccoli, or, they'd make noises if I sat down and closed my eyes for a few minutes. So I definitely felt that the stigma against, looking after yourself. But that's just where people are at. And, that's like you said, it's evolving, and we're becoming more aware and more open-minded, which is great, but we've still got so far to go as far as like, making it something that it's kind of like, if people don't brush their teeth, it's kind of like socially, there's a stigma against that. And I feel like we need to get to that point with mental hygiene where people, if you don't meditate, people will be like, what? Like, why are you not taking responsibility for yourself? Like, have a shower, mate, I feel like we'll eventually get there, but in the short term, it's just small steps,
Yeah. When you said, what, you haven't meditated, I mentioned to you before that I really struggle with meditating. I can't slow myself down. My brain's going like a million times an hour. And obviously leading up to our interview, I did your 3-part course. And I will not lie, the first day I was totally distracted. Obviously, I'm in a hotel room with my 2 kids, so I found it really hard. But as you mentioned, like, the second and third day, the more that you're practicing, I did find myself relaxing a little bit more. What advice would you have for somebody like, obviously, myself, who struggles with meditating, doesn't prioritize it, I would say, but, definitely interested in it and want to push through and get to that state that you're at, like relaxation and, just the calmness in your energy. I'm like, I need to be more like that.
So the thing I would say is that regularity is the most important thing. So rather than trying to sit for an hour and a half, I don't do that, but, some meditation practices say sit for an hour and a half. I say sit for a minimum amount of time, 10 minutes a day, and do it for 60 days. Don't try to achieve, an expert level of meditation with no experience. It's just like any other skill. You don't go into the gym and start bench pressing max reps without having, any muscle built. You build the skill. And the most important thing to do for meditation, because every experience is going to be different, and we have an idea, I'm going to sit down to meditate, then I should be relaxed, but that's not exactly how it works. So that you'll settle down the nervous system, and if the nervous system has to process some stress, it will release that stress, and you'll experience that as thinking in the meditation. So if you're judging your meditation based on, I had too many thoughts or not, then in the middle of the process that's working, you're saying, it's not working, I can't do it. So in this technique that I teach, we don't have any worry about what's happening. We just do it regularly. And what we find is that every time we come back to sit, it actually entrains the brain and the body starts to settle down. Even as we're just thinking about meditation, it starts to settle down. And so then more and more and more we do it for 10 minutes a day. And then once that becomes your habit, where you're like, I just can't wait to sit for that 10 minutes. Then, okay, let's make it a bit longer. And then after a while, you'll just sit for as long as you feel, and then you'll come out when you feel satiated. And then that's your new habit. But we definitely don't do it, all at once. And this is what I'm trying to teach is, everyone thinks I can't stop my mind from thinking, I can't settle down.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, because you're wired to go and you've got momentum. So it's like, you don't expect your car to see a red light and instantly stop. It has to slow down. So this is the process that we go through. We slow down, settle down, and then we come back and do it the next day. And what that builds is I'm turning up for myself. I'm turning up for myself. And then that creates the momentum of like, I'm really showing up here to be responsible to myself for my own mental well-being.
Cool. So how does your practice differ and from like your usual practice, and how is it relatable to tradies? So if we're going into a world, obviously the culture has changed, more open-minded, but there is still like, you know, tradie mindset of like pick up a V and a pie and you'll be right for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
You know, how are you making your mission relatable and accessible for tradies?
Well, I think that it's relatable for everyone really, but you know, the way that I'm making it relatable is to speak about it I'm trying to speak about it in simple terms. I'm not using other languages, which is kind of how I was taught with other words, Sanskrit words and stuff like that. And I don't think it's necessary. I think the main thing is that we learn how to have the direct experience for ourselves, and that informs us of exactly what the practice does. And I think of it like this. So we have a desire for our life to be a certain way. Sometimes we write that down as goals or create a vision board or whatever, and we try to move towards our ideals. But there's also a larger intelligence outside of us that is moving the whole planet forward, that's moving the whole, you know, creation forward. And I feel like when we meditate and we're allowing ourselves to expand beyond our ideas of what we want and connect to the larger intelligence, and that guides us on a moment by moment basis, as opposed to having a picture of how we think the future will be and trying to drive towards that. And that is the effortless way of living, the way of living in the moment and the way of living in flow.
Mm.
So I think with tradies, the most important thing in part of this technique is removing stress and fatigue, because we carry this tiredness and we don't process it in our sleep. We get shallow sleep and then it builds up. And so when we're going to bed, we're in a war, we're kicking and punching the blankets, and we wake up and we've had no rest. So this technique gives you deep rest, and then you come out and, you know, you're able to interact with life without that stress, you know, informing your decisions and your life. The main thing for me is that tradies need to do is to do the practice to process that. And then what comes from that is their own inner wisdom, their own insights to what they need to do next. And that's the beautiful part, is that everyone's got their own journey to go on and their own script for their perfect life that they want to live. And you know, I really feel that everyone deserves to live their highest potential and their best life. And you know, our little minds can only comprehend an okay life, but if we could let go enough to let, you know, the intelligence of nature inform us what our best life is, then it's going to be much better. Why you want to be practicing.
I'm very aligned with that too, like living your best life. And I always try enrich other people and push them to live that life as well. So
right, we don't want to be here as like as an extra, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah. So connecting to that intelligence that's already doing everything. It's already doing everything, and we're getting in the way with our fear. We're afraid, so we create boundaries, and you know a small mind, because we don't want to look at this or look at that. And so we just want to connect to it. And when we connect to it, then it's obvious. It's very obvious. Yeah. So that's the main thing. Have the direct experience of it, and then it's all there.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
100%. You are that is so well put, because I'm so aligned with that. I just think, you can definitely get in the way of yourself. And like, I'm feeling very compelled to get back into that meditation, because I feel like that's where I need to be going right now as well. So how can companies utilize your services?
So the course is best taught as a 60 to 90 minute session course. I could teach on site, or, you know, before or after work, depending on the setup that the company has. And like, I could run multiple courses throughout the day, like run day one 4 times on day one. So you can split up the workers and get everyone through the course like that. And that's the best way to be taught, because you're in the room and you can have that communication. And then if they do the course, then they're supported by a weekly group meetup where we practice together. And then, You can ask questions about your experiences or your eyes open experience. As you more and more you experience this baseline of being, it becomes part of your life. Then, questions naturally arise as to what's happening and the effects that it's having. So I'm here to answer all those questions and give some guidance about, perspective is the best to have, or a perspective on it, not the best. It's a perspective. But the other ways that I can teach is online via Zoom, or I also have a course that is online as a course, and it's broken up into smaller components to the one that you're doing. And that's called the baseline being technique. It's what I teach anyway, but it's just broken up into smaller components. So you're learning it in 10-minute chunks for 6 days. And then as you finish that course, there's a core component, and then there's a pro component. So it's kind of like 3 steps of just kind of gradually building up. In the first one, you're practicing 10 minutes a day. And then when you've stabilized that and you feel like you're ready to extend it a bit, then you go to the next one and so on. And I'm also working with companies to cater to, specifically if they want to do custom versions of that. I'm very happy and open to working with them to sort out how to best meet their needs.
Awesome. And why do you think it's important that people should meditate, or companies invest in that service for their employees?
So, one of the huge issues in the industry is obviously mental health problems. But the problem is that we're waiting until they develop symptoms before we're really giving help. So there's plenty of awareness around that now, which is really good because people are getting to be able to talk to people when they're in need. But if we go back to what is the cause of mental health, and this is my perspective, I will say it's probably not the mainstream medical version of it, but some would say it's a chemical imbalance and we need to treat the chemical imbalance. But the chemical imbalance is just printing out in the body what's going on in the mind, what's going on in our consciousness. And so what's going on in the consciousnness, it's like you're a fish in a little bag full of water and you're in the ocean, and your mind is only as big as that little bag, and there's some kind of sense that we're bigger than that and we're stuck in it, and we bump up against the walls of it, and then we don't have any way to experience that bigger self. And so what happens is we naturally get depressed because we're disconnected from the bigness, our wholeness, let's say. So this disconnection from all that we are leads to anxiety, because we don't know that the future is going to be okay, that we can trust. And it leads to depression because when you're in an anxious state for a sustained amount of time, you get tired and then you just go into too hard. And then from that space, there doesn't seem to be any way out, right? It's like the light's gone. And so rather than waiting for that to happen, we all need to develop the ability to connect to the larger sense of self as a strategic mechanical process on a daily basis.
I can even feel it myself, and I can't wait. Now that you've just talked about all this, I'm going to go and keep practicing, because I do think, I'm inside the bag right now,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a constantly expanding bag, right? Where as we go in a little bit more each day, we're moving it bigger and bigger and bigger and expanding that sense of self. And like I said, I've been practicing for 10 years, and it's still showing me more levels of happiness and more things to work on, and more expansions there. So it's a beautiful thing that it just keeps delivering. Even when you think, I've been doing it forever, surely it's not going to keep going, but it just does.
That's awesome. Well, before we wrap up today, do you have one piece of advice for anybody that might be considering getting into meditation? What would that one piece of advice be?
The piece of advice would be to do it and to commit to it for like a year. Give yourself a year of doing it every day. And you have to think about how crazy it is that if you said, I'm going to do something every single day for 365 days, how many people out of 100 would fail? Even if you said 10 minutes a day, you look at your phone, you spend 3 hours on your socials, scrolling nonsense, right? just take 10 minutes and sit down and practice this one simple thing and see what happens. You know, that's all that I would say. Like, be the experiment. Like, really, really see what's possible within your own awareness and have the experience for yourself. And then, you know, and then you'll make your own mind up. But yeah, it's really crazy how we think we're in charge of our lives, and then we can't even get 10 minutes for ourselves out of our own habits and out of our own, you know? So yeah, force yourself to the seat for 10 minutes and then let go of everything else. That's my advice.
Awesome. I'm going to do it tonight as my first commitment for the 365 days.
Beautiful.
And then
I can't wait.
that I've done it.
I can't wait to hear. I'm going to podcast with you in 365 days, and I can't wait to hear your experiences.
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Daniel. And if anybody is interested in learning more, you can check the show notes for his handles. Search him up, 10,000 Tradies on Instagram and Facebook.
Just Instagram and the website 10,000tradies.com, where you can find the course and the community 10,000 Tradie Army, and join us every Wednesday for a group meditation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you, Tegan. Thank you so much.